Beating the bougainvillea blues. Why cutting back can sometimes be the best innovation option. Now, every year about this time, we move southwards, like very late swallows, desperately seeking some of the yellow stuff to help recharge our solar cells and thaw out frozen fingers. Our preferred destination is Cyprus, Aphrodite's island, a jewel set in the Mediterranean whose long history of invasion by others suggests significant local attractions. In particular, it has a track record of sunshine hours which is hard to match, an average of 300 days every year. Of course, that does beg the question of what climatic shape the other 65 days take, and it would be greedy to expect the absence of a few drops of rain or the odd cloud or two. Unfortunately, the changeable element in the weather pattern has a predilection for December. And so this year we've enjoyed a meteorological smorgasbord in which the weather has been experimenting with all the things it otherwise never gets a chance to play with, including hail, thunder, snow, visible in the distance dusting the mountaintops, winds, even waterspouts out at sea. Plus rain. Quite a lot of it. In fact, enough to challenge even my generous view that it's okay to wash out another day of my sunshine stay because the dams need filling up ready for the dry spring and summer. But despite this rain, I'm mostly doing fine with my optimism, enjoying the peace and beauty of the island when we can go outdoors, and compensating for the lack of sunshine by drinking its distilled variety in the form of local wines to accompany local foods liberally sprinkled with excellent olive oil, again courtesy of the missing sunshine. However, this morning sees me a little end-of-year blue because I'm pressing my nose up against the rainy window pane to see the bougainvillea, or rather not seeing it. Let me explain. When we bought the house, one of the things I loved was the bougainvillea. 3 trees worth of it, massive gnarled old trunks which spiraled up and over a wooden pergola, guiding those branches and leaves to create a spectacular roof of purple and red. Look down on it from the bedroom window, and there's your magic carpet, waiting for you to climb aboard and fly away, watching the world below through its soft feathery leaves. Look up at it, and you have a wonderful cave of shade, shielding you from the fierce summer sun with its thick green foliage and gentle, impossible blossoms. Whichever angle you viewed it from, the effect was the same. Crystallized summer. Except that last year the pergola frame on which this whole amazing confection was resting gave up the ghost. Pressed down and strangled by the burden of branches, it finally began to lean dangerously to the point where we had to bite the horticultural bullet and rethink. Our superhero builder, Dave, sucked his teeth, cocked his head a couple of times, then confirmed that we needed to replace the frame with a stronger new pergola suitably secured to the ground. But in order to effect this reconstruction, we'd need to cut back the bougainvillea. Big time. Cue Ollie, whose green fingers and experienced brain have learned to work with the island's fecund, sun-rich approach to growth. Now, he reliably reassured us that the project would work, and that while the short-term operation might look a little savage, it would all come out right in the end. He reminded us that this was precisely why the local wines taste so good, because the vineyard owners understand the importance of pruning. Now, notice this, the winter round of hacking back the thick bushes which had been so rich in foliage and fruit to the point where there are just a few stumps sticking up like dead men's fingers clawing at the sky. And yet, by the springtime, the whole glorious cycle starts to repeat itself. His parting words were along the lines of, "Trust me, nature's got this." So we bit that bullet. And what greeted us this year on arrival was a somewhat stark reduction in the foliage. In fact, no bougainvillea foliage at all, just a couple of very lonely looking stumps. Not so easy on the eye, but I'll try to have faith. And at least it offers an interesting metaphor for how we might think about innovation management at the start of this new year. Now, it's a safe bet to assume that there are plenty of resolutions buzzing round the brains of those with a stake in helping create value from ideas, innovation. Lots of good intentions about doing things differently in 2025. Expansive plans to try out new approaches, deploy new tools, do new stuff. And there's no shortage of new things to try. There's a whole industry out there dedicated to challenging us to revise our innovation approaches. Research papers, conference speeches, benchmark case studies, even, dare I say it, the odd blog or two like this one. The invitation to reframe, to reinvent ourselves comes at us from multiple angles. And there's a bewildering but enticing display of new tools and techniques which threaten to turn us into children running through the innovation sweet shop on a serious sugar high. And now we have AI. You don't need to be Cassandra to be capable of making a pretty safe bet. 2025 will be the year of AI moving mainstream. Already a majority of organizations report experimenting with the enormous opportunity. It won't take long before that converts to proven improvements in practice. Changing the ways in which we work with innovation, the products and services we offer, and the different targets we try to reach. Now, the danger in all of this is that we keep adding to our repertoire, bringing more and more to bear on our innovation operations. And we risk them becoming a close cousin to my bougainvillea thicket, overgrown to the point of collapse. Innovation's all about creating and developing routines, patterns of behavior which enable us to repeat the innovation trick. We learn over time effective ways to make innovation happen. How to search effectively, how we choose amongst different opportunities, how we implement in agile fashion. We streamline the process of converting ideas to value. And over time, we build on those routines which work for us, embedding them in the way we do things round here, shaping them into the kind of innovation system which the International Standards Organization now recommends. Not just slogans about the importance of innovation, but the structures, processes, and policies to enable those behaviors. Now, managed well, this is a prescription for healthy growth. But it's not a matter of abstract systems or process flowcharts. It's much closer to the challenge of planting and tending an orchard. A rich harvest of innovation fruit can come from strong branches on trees which have matured thanks to careful cultivation. Maintaining what's already established and allowing for new shoots sprouting in new directions, opening up more possibilities for future growth. This doesn't happen by accident. We need to think about innovation horticulture, how best to manage that orchard. Now that's a lesson which has been learned quietly by many organizations, those who've been playing the innovation long game. Organizations who are members of the 100 Club, those who've survived and thrived over a century or more. Organizations who've ridden out some stormy weather by a commitment to innovation and by creating the kind of innovation system of which the ISO would be proud. And what those organizations have in common is the ability to maintain what works, not just following fashion, but carefully reviewing how they manage innovation on a regular basis. They've become skilled at enabling new growth through adding new routines, analogous to planting new saplings or grafting new strains onto old branches. But above all, they've mastered the art of pruning to create the space for all this new stuff to happen. And this is really the key part of the dynamic capability which innovation represents. The ability to step back, review, asking three simple questions. Of those innovation routines, the way we manage the process, what do we need to do more of, reinforce and strengthen? Conversely, what do we need to do less of, even stop? They might have worked in the past, but perhaps no longer. And what new routines do we need to develop, to cope with new challenges? Now that's as much about letting go as it is about adding new approaches. And it's crucially about strategically identifying where we need the new growth to come from. Just like a skilled gardener cuts back deep, but also makes sure she's identified the spurs, the tiny buds which will provide the sites from which new things become possible. Now this extended gardening metaphor might sound a little fanciful, but we've got plenty of examples to illustrate it. Think about 3M, one of the longest established innovation gardens, still able to grow vigorously in new directions after well over 100 years. During the early part of this century, the company invested heavily in developing routines around Six Sigma, process improvement, securing significant gains in terms of productivity through systematic incremental innovation. But it became clear that that relentless focus on doing what they already did, but better, was actually driving out their capacity for breakthrough innovation. So the program was pruned to allow more exploration space. Importantly, it wasn't abandoned, but rather trimmed back to enable new growth to come through. Or Procter & Gamble, making the bold decision to cut back their long 150 years, their long tradition of routines built around research and development, making the radical shift to a more open approach. Now, connect and develop is now at the heart of how they innovate, drawing in a steady flow of ideas from outside the company alongside their internal capabilities. It's taken a quarter of a century for these new routines to mature, but they now yield significant gains across the innovation spectrum. Or the German company, Heller, experiencing a key challenge around its rapid growth from being a successful 19th century startup to a large established 20th century player. Its early experience helped create routines around new opportunities, triggered by new technologies and by new market niches. Plenty of innovation activity, in fact a veritable hive of creativity, with bees buzzing in and out, working on a growing number of projects. But proliferating projects meant increasing costs and growing confusion around priorities which could only be solved by adding more minds to the mix. In the end, the innovation engine began spinning out of control, overheating with all those innovation efforts. It came to a head with a review which suggested of the roughly 4,000 new products in the range at that time, the vast majority took up time and effort, but actually made little contribution. In particular, the review suggested 95 products were responsible for around 80% of turnover and 34% of the R&D costs. 305, 3 times as many, were responsible for 15% of turnover and 35% of the R&D spend. And 3,100 were responsible for only 5% of turnover and another third of the R&D spend. The answer wasn't to slam feet on the innovation brakes and stop, but it was about pruning, cutting back on most of the projects, focusing attention on those with strategic contributions to make. And having done this, to put in place new systems, new routines for project selection, portfolio management, and regular staged reviews. Of course, it's not just about cutting back to make space in our innovation garden. The other side of this involves introducing new routines to enable new growth. But these, by their nature, will be young seedlings, not well-established trees. They need careful tending, and experienced innovation gardeners understand the importance of supportive structures and growth regimes to help them take root. using canes and trellises, introducing fertilizers and nutrients, above all, keeping a careful eye on these early stage experiments. They won't all survive, but those proto-routines of today could become critical capabilities in the future. So it's worth investing that time and effort now. So while I'm still harboring doubts, I'm hoping to see a bougainvillea renaissance beginning on my next visit to Cyprus. A sort of blooming version of Field of Dreams, that movie. As with baseball teams, so with pergolas and bougainvillea bushes. Create the space and the new growth will come.